Have you noticed that not everyone who talks about God actually lives what they preach? Appearances can often be deceiving. There are people who attend church, know verses by heart, and speak beautifully about faith, but deep down, their hearts are far from Christ. The Bible warns us that there are false believers, people who call themselves disciples but do not produce true fruit. The problem is that if we are not careful, we can be deceived by them, or worse, we may be acting like a false believer without realizing it. Do you want to understand how to identify these signs and reflect on your own life? Then stay with me, because what follows will open your eyes. You know the type of person who likes to demand perfection from others, but doesn't live up to their own standards. That's a clear sign of a false believer: hypocrisy. This type of person talks about holiness, judges those who make mistakes, and imposes rules, but when you look at their daily life, you find no practice, only talk. Jesus already denounced this behavior in the Pharisees, who demanded an impossible burden from others but were unwilling to change their own lives. This is exactly what the false believer does. They appear very spiritual on the outside, but on the inside, there is no real transformation. The danger of this is great, because hypocrisy not only alienates the hypocrite, but also those who live with him. Those who observe this kind of attitude end up becoming discouraged in their faith because they see inconsistencies. And here's the question: how often do we demand from others what we ourselves don't do? We need to stop and think about that. Do you know what else reveals a lot about a person's heart? How they react to correction. Some grow, learn, and give thanks, but the false believer closes their ears and rejects any advice. That's another sign of a false believer: resistance to correction. When someone confronts them with the truth of the word, instead of acknowledging it and changing, they close themselves off, defend themselves, or even attack those who tried to help them. It's as if they are always right and no one can touch their life. The Bible is very direct about this. Whoever rejects correction despises his own soul. In other words, rejecting discipline does not harm others, but the person himself. Because those who do not accept correction never grow and never mature in faith. And do you know what is worse? When a false believer does not accept correction, he ends up creating a barrier against God himself. Because the Lord uses brothers, leaders, and even situations to teach us. But when the heart is hardened, nothing gets through. By closing his heart to correction, the false believer begins to choose his own ways. And in that choice, he tries to walk with God without renouncing his passions. And that is another sign of a false believer. He tries to serve two masters. Jesus was clear when he said, "No one can serve two masters." That's because the human heart cannot surrender to God if it remains attached to other passions. It's like someone who says they trust in the Lord but puts money above everything else, or someone who raises their hands in worship but outside of church is a slave to addictions, pleasures, or relationships that lead them away from their faith. In practice, this false believer tries to balance two worlds, but this balance is an illusion because sooner or later one side will prevail. Serving two masters is to live in constant internal conflict. It's like having one foot in the light and the other in the darkness without really standing firm anywhere. But God doesn't want a divided heart. He wants total surrender. Another sign of a false believer is when someone believes that faith without works is enough. The false Christian believes that words alone make him righteous, but forgets that true faith brings about transformation and concrete actions. The Bible is very clear, so also faith by itself, if it does not have works, is dead. This means that it is useless to talk about love if there is no practice of love. It is useless to say that you trust God if in times of difficulty you act as if He did not exist. Faith that is not manifested in works is like a tree without fruit. It looks alive on the outside, but it is dry on the inside. The false believer settles for this empty discourse. He prefers to believe that faith is just a matter of words or thoughts, because that does not require real change. But the truth is that those who truly believe demonstrate it with their lives, with their daily choices and attitudes. The truth is that false believers may deceive some people for a time, but they will never deceive God. The Word calls us to true faith, which is not just for show, but which produces fruit and reveals Christ in us. Therefore, we should not use these signs to judge others, but to examine ourselves. A good start would be to ask ourselves if our faith has been true or just a facade. If this reflection spoke to you, leave a comment here saying, "Glory to God." And don't forget to subscribe to the channel to continue receiving messages that will strengthen your walk with God. After all, growing in faith is a daily process, and I want to walk with you on this journey. May God bless you and help you to be a better Christian every day. See you in the next video.